Blog Talk Radio.
We are the UR Tennis Network. Our mission is to be the voice of tennis. We enlist a team of passionate enthusiasts to promote our sport. We strive to bring interesting perspectives on the many spins of tennis. Our goal is to provide the learners of our sport with current news and information from many angles. We seek active participation from communities interested in tennis, but tennis is not interested in them. We are expanding our outreach. Tennis is a true lifetime sport that needs to be talked about, and the UR Tennis Network pledges to pursue this idea relentlessly.
Good morning and welcome to the Parenting Aces radio show on Blog Talk Radio's UR Tennis Network. I'm your host, Lisa Stone, and I'm coming at you from a snowy Atlanta today. I know the rest of the country is cracking up at us, but we truly do have snow today and no equipment to clear our roads. So once again, school has been canceled, and my son is hanging out twiddling his thumbs because once again his high school tennis match has been canceled for this afternoon. We are off to a crazy start to that season. The poor kids have not played a match yet due to our weather. But all that said, our focus on today's show is going to be on college tennis. There's so much going on in college tennis right now, and I've written a couple pieces recently. I've had a guest post recently on the website about international players in college tennis. And I've been engaging in conversations all over Facebook about college tennis and, you know, what's going on and what's being told to us and what's truly happening behind the scenes. And I think there's a little bit of a discrepancy there. So hopefully our guest today can shed some light on the truth of what's going on, and we can continue having these conversations in a public forum in hopes of providing the best experiences for our junior players as they move from junior tennis into college tennis. I think it's really important for us parents to understand clearly what's happening, what the opportunities are for our children based on their level of play and what they're hoping to gain from a college tennis experience, whether their focus is solely on the academic piece of it, whether it's on the scholarship aspect, or whether it's to become a better tennis player and prepare for life after college on the professional tour. So I'm really looking forward to hearing from some callers today, from our guests today, and I'll introduce them in just a moment. But I think it's, you know, a great opportunity for us to continue this conversation. Hopefully the ITA, the NCAA, the USTA will listen and hear these different perspectives and maybe take them into account moving forward. I'm not holding my breath on that one, but a girl can hope. So before we get into today's show, I want to go to our quick PSA, and then when we come back, today's show on college tennis.
Orthopedic surgeons are seeing an increase in overuse injuries when young athletes perform the same repetitive stressful motions over and over. Pitching, tennis, weight training, even long swimming workouts can cause overuse trauma that may require surgery. If your kids play and train hard, visit orthoinfo.org or stopsportsinjuries.org. A message from the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons and the American Orthopedic Society for Sports Medicine.
Welcome back to the Parenting Aces radio show on Blog Talk Radio's UR Tennis Network. I'm your host, Lisa Stone, and holy cow, my studio lines are lighting up. This is awesome. I'm really thrilled that so many people are interested in today's topic and are taking an interest in calling in, and I really look forward to hearing lots of perspectives and points of view on what's happening in college tennis. Our main two guests today are Granger Hutchins from the Texas College Tennis website and Twitter. Granger writes about everything having to do with Texas College Tennis. He tweets about it. He even goes as far as doing rankings in college tennis on a weekly basis. So he has a very unique perspective to share. And also with us today is Chad Camper, who is the women's coach at Louisiana Tech University, which is in the neck of the woods where I grew up, outside of Ruston, Louisiana. And so I'm thrilled to have both of them on the air. I'm going to go ahead and put their mics through as live. Guys, are you with us?
Yes, ma'am. Thanks for having me.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you so much, both of you, for being on today. We have a couple other people on hold, and guys, I hope, or guys and women, I hope you will hang on 1 second, because I just want to give Granger and Chad a chance to give a little bit more background on their perspectives here. So, Chad, I want to start with you. You are a coach at Louisiana Tech. You, by your own recognition, Louisiana Tech is not one of the premier D1 programs out there, and so recruiting and marketing and all of those things present a challenge for a program like Tech. And I'd love for you to just give us a little bit of info on your program, what makes it unique, and why families should be looking at schools like Tech for their kids' college tennis experience.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. Yeah, Louisiana Tech University, very good academically. We're a small town, very sports oriented. One thing I really like about being here at Louisiana Tech is just that we're growing. Our budgets are growing, our facilities are growing. We just redid our courts, windscreens, like we got into Conference USA a couple of years ago. So everything's really growing here. It's really fun to be a part of something, to really be able to build a program, which is really exciting. One thing, you're right, it is a struggle being a mid-major program to get some of the really good Americans to email you back, to get their attention. And we're all so busy. Kids are in school, parents are running kids left and right. Lisa, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And I think that they just don't take the time to look outside of that radius. And they know the quote-unquote big programs. They see them in football and basketball and TV, and I commonly get players that would play 3 or 4 for me that would not, email me back, and they have high goals, which is fine, and it does make it difficult, especially when I can recruit international, and it's actually, even though they are miles and miles and miles away from me, it's actually easier for me than to go 2-3 hours away.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Chad, but with the internet now, recruiting an international player really isn't any more of a challenge for you than recruiting a player outside of your region. I mean, it's all done via video and Skype sessions and email exchanges, whether the kid lives in California or Maine or, down in Argentina.
No, that's correct. Yeah, with internet and Skype and seeing videos and results, and also like me and probably most college coaches, we have contacts in other countries, and I think I speak for most college coaches. I don't care what division it is. You want kids that are hungry. You want kids that want to work hard, and my international players and the experience that I've had in college coaching is they come here and they're serious. They're thankful, and they want that opportunity, and I can get a player in another country to commit to me here at Louisiana Tech, or probably most mid-majors, actually easier, than an American kid, for the most part.
Right. Well, it's an interesting point. And Granger, I'm trying to bring you back on. You disconnected from me. Oh, there you are. Granger, you back on?
Is that me? Can you hear me?
That's you. I can hear you. You dropped off for a second there, but I think we got you back. So I don't know if you were able to hear what Chad said, but, talking about the challenge of recruiting kids that may not have heard about his program here in the States, whereas international players, their goal is just to get over here to play college tennis, and sometimes he has an easier time recruiting that way. It was interesting. John Wertheim just recently published his mailbag and kind of dissed one of your Texas schools for having so many international players on the roster. And I'm wondering if maybe you can offer up a perspective, given that, that's your neck of the woods, what's going on in Texas with recruiting at the various programs, at the various levels, because y'all have the top programs, but you also have mid-majors, and then you have D2, D3, junior college, community college, all of that.
Yeah, I think it's a combination. I agree with a lot of what Chad says. It's difficult to convince kids to, it's a long education process, and personally, I feel like it's easy for the top schools, to go out and talk to a few players. They want guys who are going to be able to compete in their rosters, but also they want to be able to compete, across the NCAA, so they are getting those international players. Some schools, and listen, I'm not going to defend anybody who does it, full international, but a lot of times, and I've heard this, is it's so much easier because you don't have the parents calling nonstop. The kids are eager to come, and they, it's finding the right kid who wants to come and make the best of a situation, who's maybe had a struggle a little bit more. Now, I'll talk from a local USTA perspective. We did everything we could to try to educate coaches, and we didn't do a great job of it, but coaches from Division II, Division III, and even some of the smaller Division I schools, because we do have quite a wide variety, to contact the USTA, and I recommend they all contact their sections, because there's a way to get ranking lists and mailing lists of players, and there has been. And to reach out at a young age, because you've got to kind of let them know and educate them in the process. It's when they get into 16s, you just got to let them know that you're there and that you're coming up. And will you always get them? No, but I think that like Chad said, there's a lot of different reasons to go to Louisiana Tech. You get a good education. There's a good if you're from the area, there's always a good alumni base. Those kind of things that when you take back home after you've got a college degree are very turn out to be very important. And if you can get that into the process at some point, I think you're ahead of it.
Great. We've got several callers on the line. I'm going to just see who we've got here and let them have a chance to speak. I've got a caller from area code 936294. Are you there?
Yeah, Lisa.
Who am I speaking with?
Hi, Lisa. It's Jim from Sam Houston State University.
Hey, Jim. How are you?
I am very cold. We are in the middle of Texas, and we had some snow last night. I am not used to this, and my girls on my team are very disappointed in me because they're blaming me for this horrible weather.
We've got the same in Atlanta, so I feel you.
I know you do. I know.
So what do you have? I mean, I don't know if you had a chance to hear what Chad and Granger had to say, but you face the same challenges that Chad faces on a different level in terms of name recognition for your program and trying to help families and players understand the value of coming to your school. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I heard what Chad said, and it's very difficult to disagree with any of that because it's something that all of us in the mid-major range have to go through. I think one of the big difficulties is that it deals with budget in many situations, Lisa. For an American player, I really have to plan enough money in my budget to go and see her 2 or 3 times compete, go on a home visit, bring her in on a official visit, and doing that against maybe 100 other Division I or Division II universities, it's really very, very difficult to expend that kind of money on a limited budget just for one person. So, I mean, that is a difficulty. As Chad said, there's also a difference between the ease of finding a very talented international player and someone who might fit in toward the bottom of the lineup from America. I mean, the options are, if we're looking at it that way, I want the best player that I can find. I'd love to have another one from America or another two from America. But unless I get players who are talented enough that they will help our program grow, it's very difficult to offer them a full scholarship when an international player is going to come in on a higher level and be able to help our program grow.
And so what, if you could tell parents, give your sales pitch. Want our child at your program?
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple of things. One, a lot of parents, and I've lost American players because of this, say that their daughter is going to go to another university because she's going to get a better education. And I totally disagree with that concept. And most of the people I know who are in education also disagree with it. Now, I've coached and been a part of programs on the Ivy Leagues, on very prestigious university, Fairfield University in Missouri, and now down here. And you're not going to get a bad education no matter where you go if you want to get a quality education. And that's a concept that a lot of people in America don't really understand yet. If you don't want to get a great education, you could go to the best university in the country, and because you're not taking advantage of it, you're not going to get a great education. You can go to one that has one of the weakest ratings in the country, and if you really want to get a great education, you can use those professors so that you grow as much as you possibly want to. So I think one of the big myths is that the name of the university and the quality of the education is going to be synonymous when it's really not. The other thing to me that is very important to try and get parents to understand is that if you want your son or daughter to play tennis, don't look at some of the places where they really are going to sit for 4 years and not play very much. That's kind of foolish. There are so many programs that go wanting, scholarships that are still hanging out there because the parent or the player doesn't believe that the quality of the tennis is high enough. And if I were a player, I would much rather be a big fish in a small pond than being a little guppy in the ocean. And a lot of them really want to be that guppy in the ocean just because of the name of the university.
If I could jump in there, Jim, Jim and I know each other. That's exactly it. And I think if you had every mid-major coach in America, they would be repeating, what Jim and I are saying. And so many Americans think that they're going to go to that really big school and sit for 4 years, and I would rather be a big fish, in a little pond. And if I can be bold, I hope your phone lines don't light up after I comment on this, Lisa. But a lot of Americans, they're like, well, I'm a 4-star. Well, I'm a 5-star. To some mid-majors, we just know where you're going to play in our lineup. And if we think you're going to come in and play 4 or 5, but I can bring a young lady or a guy in from a different country, and he's going to play 1 or 2. I mean, I gotta pick the best player. And I think that we have that idea here in America that it's only us. We're so into tennisrecruiting.net. We're so into, I'm ranked this much in Texas, or I did this in high school. There's a whole other world of college players that are hungry, that they want to come in. They're going to take your scholarship. And that's just the truth. Again, I don't mean to come on here and offend anybody. I'm just being honest.
Well, and I think that's an excellent point, Chad, and I actually had this conversation with Ross Greenstein yesterday. We were talking about, what is the issue here, and it seems to me that, now with the advent of universal tennis ratings, which seem to be gaining some traction, that maybe we as parents and our kids as players, if we all start looking at UTRs of the various college teams and we're honest with ourselves, we understand better where our kids are going to fit in. And I think, using UTR in that manner is a really valuable tool. And all of you listening, you parents that are listening and you players that are listening, I hope you will take time. You can have a free account on there and just see what your rating is and look at the ratings of the players at the schools you're looking at and see if you fit in, because I promise you the coaches are looking. Am I right?
Yes, you were definitely right.
And so it's a thing about being honest with what your level truly is, what your child's level truly is, not how many stars they have or what they're ranked in their state or section or even nationally, because like you said, Chad, the coaches are looking at the whole big world out there, and there are plenty of players out in that whole big world that could blow your little child off the court. And it's a harsh reality, especially for those of us who have spent 10 years, tens if not hundreds of thousands.
Hello?
I think we lost her.
Nope.
There we go.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. Keep going. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I was going to say only to realize that our child's not going to get a full ride to college, because even after spending tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars and 10 years in development, they're not good enough. And it's a harsh reality, and I think a lot of us have a hard time facing that.
Well, Lisa, I mean, you're taking us into another area, and that goes down into the junior ranks and coaches. If you had about 6 hours, I would be happy to vent about what I see from so many people who call themselves coaches working with young people who really want to develop in the junior ranks. It's horrendous.
Yeah.
And that's the only word I can use. And if this lights up your phone lines, that's okay. There are a number of extraordinarily talented people working with our juniors. There's no question about that. But I can't tell you the number of people I talk to, juniors who have no clue what a short ball range is, have no clue how to hit an approach shot, have no clue how to volley, how to use the court. It's basically, let me hit ground strokes from the baseline all day long, and then I'm going to be ready to either do very well in the juniors or move into the college ranks. And that's not a product of their ability level. That's a product of their coaching at a developmental stage. A number of years ago, there was a big move to eliminate singles in the juniors and just focus on doubles, which was such a marvelous concept that it went nowhere, as with many good ideas with the USTA, because then you would force young people to develop their games, stay in the game longer because they would have fun because they're playing with somebody else. So many good things, and it went by the wayside. And how much of my time in the 20 hours a week that we're allowed by the NCAA do I have to spend working on doubles because people come in and they don't have a clue? And all of this goes down to junior development.
Right. Well, I engage in that argument a lot too, Jim, and I have to be really careful what I say, but I will say that I have certainly experienced that firsthand with my child, and I've talked about it a lot, both on my website and on this show, that it's kind of mind-boggling to think that a child has spent, thousands of hours on the court and doesn't understand how to construct a point properly, or doesn't understand when to use top spin versus slice, when to use a drop shot, because they've never been taught that information. And like you said, it's no reflection on the child's talent if they haven't been taught the information. So from the parental side, it is terribly frustrating, and it's a reality of what we're dealing with, and it's one of the reasons that I urge parents to really get educated about the coach that you're paying all this money to, and understand what it is they're able to share with your child. Because if they can't get your child to a level where you college coaches are interested in looking at them and offering them a spot in scholarship money, then you have to think about, why am I spending this time and money developing my child? Would that time and money be better spent elsewhere? And then that opens up the whole conversation about the other benefits of tennis, which we'll save that conversation definitely for another day. I have another couple callers on the line. I want to give them a chance to speak up. I have a caller from area code 225767. Are you there?
Lisa, what's up? Tony Menace, how you doing?
Tony Menace, how are you? Another Louisiana boy.
Good. Huh, Chad, what's happening, man?
Hey, Tony, how you doing, sir?
Good. Just you guys, it's snow up there?
Yeah, yes, sir. We're closed in here.
Wow.
So,
Interesting discussion, guys.
Yeah, what are your thoughts?
No, I think that a lot of what's been said is dead on the money. I think that one of the issues that you have here, whether, I'm hearing mid-major, but even, at LSU, when you're looking at, trying to compete against the Georgias, the Floridas, the schools like that, you're in a situation where you've got to get the best player possible. And so it's a dilemma because I think in theory every coach, whether it be whatever division it may be, wants the first look is to look at American kids. But at the same time, if, there is a lot more expense as far as, the visits and the time, whereas the international kids, it is a lot easier. But I think that the biggest issue in tennis today, I just think there's not enough quality players to go around. And so, therefore, coaches have to look elsewhere regardless of, what division they're in. And I think it's a very, very complex, very complicated deal where, when you're trying to get kids, when you're looking at whether you're Louisiana Tech, Sam Houston, LSU, you look at your schedule and you say, okay, I'm here and I want to be here. And you immediately think in terms of people, not necessarily where they're from and what you can do to compete with the top teams. And I think that's a pretty standard across the board.
An interesting point that was made to me recently is if you look at tennis recruiting and the top recruits for any one class, so since we're in 2015, let's look at 2015. You've got 25 blue chips. Then you've got, I think, 75 5-stars, if I'm not mistaken, and 100 4-stars, 100 3-stars, and go down from there. So if you've got 100 high-level programs in the country, and let's say each of them need 3 players for the fall. That's 300 players they need. Well, guess what? There aren't 300 blue chip, 5-star, and top 4-star kids in America. And if you go down to the number 300 kid in the class of 2015 on tennis recruiting, that child may or may not be of the level that's able to compete at one of these top programs. May not be at the level that's able to compete at a mid-major program. And so the coaches really have no choice but to look outside the U.S.
And, the other thing I was going to mention, too, and just listening to a little bit of the conversation, when I can't do so much talking about junior coaches, just think about it.
I'm going to put the blame back where it goes.
What's that?
I said I'm going to put the blame where it goes. That was Jim.
Well,
that's okay, Lisa. I'll take it.
I'll say, I think from this standpoint, think about this. What other sport, the problem you have here is what other sport do you have where you don't have the football, for the most part, I know this happens some, football players don't go to a high school and say, I don't like the coach, I'm going to another high school, and then say, I don't like this coach, I'm going to another high school. I think we've created a monster in tennis where the entitlement and the attitude of these kids come in where they're used to having, 4 or 5 coaches through juniors and having their way, and all of a sudden it's a different scenario, and you're paying them, they're not paying you. And so that in part, because to go along with, to back up what I'm saying, women's tennis leads the NCAA in number of transfers. And, you don't see the top quarterback from Alabama transferring to USC. I mean, you see it a little bit, but not to the extent of tennis, where there have been great programs decimated by this. So I think the blame goes everywhere, because there's a system in place here where when a kid's 14, 15 years old, they're taught, hey, if I don't like the way I'm being talked to or coached or this or that, I can always move. And I think that that's what you get in college too.
Interesting. That's very interesting.
This is Chad. I'd like to jump in there. Tony's dead on. You know, like for instance, my experience, not just at Louisiana Tech, but other universities with internationals, they're never late. I mean, they're just ready to go. And then when you're dealing with Americans, like, you work for them. And I had a young lady on my team one of my first years, American young lady, and Tony, you'll get a kick out of this, is like she was rolling her eyes every time her doubles partner missed. And it was, you know, I was pretty angry after the match. I was pretty hard on her, and she told one of the other girls on the team that her dad doesn't even talk to her like that. And that's just such a different mentality than, you know, maybe a football coach and stuff like that. So, Tony, that's a great point.
Well, and I think that, you know, when you look at it and you just look at and again, it's not every international kid's unbelievable. They have attitudes too, and every American kid isn't bad. I'm not saying that by any stretch of the imagination, but overall, that, and then the other part of this, you know, and then I think part of the issue that we have with this is kind of tap dancing around it, but being totally honest, how many kids do we sign and all of a sudden, hey, I got my scholarship and I'll pick up a racket for 4 months? How many kids that all of a sudden in the summer just chill in the summer? I mean, I think that there's got to be an emphasis, and right now I'm talking specifically with the development of American kids to get that hunger and work ethic back. Because one of the points I think Jim made a little bit earlier is, you know, there are many kids, and Lisa, you and I have talked about this, that all of a sudden, you know, hey, I want to walk on your team when I'm at LSU, and I'm going, well, you could play at other schools, and you could, you know, get a full scholarship and be, you know, 4 or 5 on a team or 3 on a team, and develop to be as competitive as some of the players that I currently have. And I guess a case in point, look at how exciting college basketball is, because it's so spread out where kids aren't uncomfortable going to smaller schools, and you have the Butlers, the teams like that, you know, get good players and develop. So I think the overall attitude that I've got to go to Texas, or even if I walk on, I've got to go to Georgia, even if I walk on, and looking through unrealistic eyes to say, you're going to sit the bench, you know, I think that that's part of the problem too, because you'll have kids sitting on the bench at several schools that could play for you. Case in point, even at LSU, I mean, there were girls that were at, like, you know, Stanford or Florida that could play 2, 3, 4 for me that are playing 8. And so I think there's a lot of dynamics that go into it. I think it's something that, you know, really needs to be discussed, but also the most important thing is parents, coaches have to look through realistic eyes.
Excellent point. Granger, coming from the USTA background, what are your thoughts on this? You know, what are you hearing from USTA in terms of helping kind of curb the situation that these coaches are talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I hesitate to talk from a USTA perspective too much. You know, I am on a committee, but you know, I no longer work there. I think there is a lot of problem, and I agree with a lot of what these coaches are saying here. I think I was going to make some points, you know, when it was my turn again. But the number one, you know, that Tony talked about, you know, was the entitlement. There is a sense of entitlement that you don't get a lot of times, most of the time, from the international players, and I think that's one of the reasons that these you know, the coaches head there. I've seen it firsthand. You know, players who, you know, just feel like, you know, you go to a school that I'm not going to say any names, but there was a school that has a lot of Belarusian and Russian players that I've seen play, and they have a special connection to that. And those players come in with a desire to make their lives better. They're going to do everything they can to get that college degree and work their butts off to be the best they can. And, maybe tennis works out, maybe it doesn't, but they're going to fight on the court. They're going to do all those little things. And when their coach talks to them, they're going to listen. And is it always going to be agreeable? No. Whereas I've seen coaches run out of the game, college coaches run out of the game, because they're just tired of dealing with parents calling them all the time and not holding their own kids accountable. So, I do think there's a lot of that. I also want to.
Can I interrupt you 1 second, Granger? Sorry,
yeah.
I just want to make one point along those lines, and this is another reality of U.S. tennis. It's freaking expensive to develop a tennis player in the States. I don't care what anybody says. It is expensive, and so if you've got a tennis environment that's costing families tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars in the 10-year period that child's going through the process, that attracts only a certain echelon of the population. People that don't have means can't afford to participate in tennis, and that's a big problem here. And I think we don't talk about it enough. I think there are efforts being made to have grants and opportunities and diversify the sport. But the underlying issue is it costs a hell of a lot of money. And so where are you going to get those kids that are fighting for survival? You're not in the U.S. They can't afford to be part of the sport.
One thing I will speak to real quickly is, attending a USTA sectional meeting this past weekend, the national office always has somebody come down and talk, and I do think there's an understanding of this. It's really hard because it is expensive, and where do you put that money to make it effective? I do think that's on their radar. There is some talk about reaching into the amazing reserves that they have to use some of this money for this outreach. So, I'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. But, I agree with you wholeheartedly. Trust me, I'm a parent. I went through the system myself, but now, being a parent now and looking at what it's going to cost if my son decides he wants to keep it up, it is tough. But, there are some difficult decisions to be made along the way.
Sure.
Lisa, can I ask Granger a question?
Sure, go ahead. And I've got another caller waiting, so I want to give him a chance to get on too. But go ahead. Okay,
Granger, it's Jim. I got a question for you. We were talking about recruiting, and Lisa was talking about the 5-star recruits, the blue chips, the 4.32-1s. I'm looking at a kid right now that I'm trying to get to transfer to me because she went somewhere else. Coach refuses to play her because she's not in. She beat everyone in practice, but he won't play her. So anyway, she's going to probably transfer to me. She doesn't have 1 star after her name. She went from a small town, but she's tremendously talented, extraordinarily athletic, and I would think by the end of 1 year playing Division I tennis, she will be a star, and I really believe that of her. And I've been doing this long enough that I have a pretty good sense of quality. But my question is, the USTA seems only interested in the blue chippers. Why, year after year after year after year after year, are they not realizing that there's a hell of a lot more talent out there than simply someone who has 5 stars after their name, and comb the backwoods to find those people and cultivate them?
That's an excellent point. I do believe that there is some of that going on. I'll be first and foremost and say I don't believe it's the USTA's responsibility that we're a big country, and the resources that would be required to do something like that. And, I'm not sure we want to move to a system as we saw in some other countries, where you move kids in and you have these talent things. But it might not be a bad idea. And I think with the advent of, the new facility they're building in Orlando, some of the other things that are going on, they're trying to do it. The problem is, and I'll tell you, this is not an excuse, of the USTA, but it's a function of it. It's 17 sections that is run by a volunteer base, but then there's a staff. I mean, the mechanics of the whole system are messed up, and that creates just some. It's he who cries loudest usually gets the rule change. So it's a weird system in general. So but I think the USTA understands that there's probably some revamping that's slowly going on as they move out the power from the volunteer base and move it more to the staff. We'll see.
Interesting. Let me bring this other caller on the line.
I'm sorry, go ahead. Okay.
I just want to bring this other caller on the line because they've been holding a long time. Caller from 704-300. Are you there?
I am here.
Who's on with us?
Lisa, this is Scott Hanback from Lenoir-Rhyne University in North Carolina.
Hey, Scott. Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on.
And so, have you had a chance to hear what everybody else has been saying? You've been holding on a long time. I apologize for that.
No, that's okay. I have been on since the beginning, and I am a college coach at a Division II school. I've also been a junior coach. I've had several junior players that have played Division I. I've got a girl at Elon University playing number 1 as a freshman. Used to coach Ty Kwiatkowski, who's actually playing at Virginia right now, and several others. So I've kind of been on both sides of this equation.
And so what are your thoughts about what's going on in terms of recruiting and our American kids looking at schools like Lenoir-Rhyne, like Sam Houston, like Louisiana Tech? Why are you guys having such a hard time getting American kids? What message are we parents missing here?
Well, I agree with the other coaches. And actually, we're farther down the totem pole because we are Division II. I actually lose out on the kids who, want to even go to a lower level or mid-level Division I school and, won't even consider a Division II school. So I've definitely seen that, and I have to agree with the other callers and their statements about junior tennis in the country and the attitudes and everything else. There's a lot that we could go on and discuss. As a college coach, it amazes me, or even as a junior coach, when I walk around, I see a boy's 18 and, a kid in the 18-year-olds that's 6'4", and he's still using a Western grip that was never changed from the time he was 11 or 12. Obviously his coaches have done him a disservice through the years. And Lisa, as you and I have talked about on Facebook, parent education in this country is almost non-existent. Their best form of education is other parents, and as we all know, what's good for one player is not good for another player, and we don't do a very good job of educating parents on junior tennis, on about coaching, about development, about college processing, as far as recruiting. We've got to do a better job of that in this country, and that's just some of the things we've got to work on.
There are now several companies out there that their sole purpose is getting international players scholarships into American universities. That's what they exist to do. I've had a couple of them on this show over the years. And so we, as parents of American players, are really up against it. And if we don't expand our vision beyond the top D1 programs, we really have no one to blame but ourselves, I think. And so I'm just wondering, from all of you coaches that are on here, I still ask the question, what are we missing? What is it that you guys are not doing or we're not doing to get our kids spots on your team?
Lisa, this is Chad. Can I jump in and jump on that real quick? I can tell a quick story. I was coaching some zonals in the summer, and I had, 6 boys, 6 girls on my team, and I only spent a week with them, But I took the time the night before the last day, and I wrote what I felt each player needed to work on. And some people, are 2 or 3 things. Scott, you just mentioned like a Western grip. I had a girl that had a bigger grip size than me. I mean, this thing was huge. I was like, how do you get your hands around it? I mean, it was unbelievable. Good player though, but when she was on the run with her backhand, she couldn't go cross court. She couldn't use the racket hit speed. Things like that, to little things, And I kind of told the parents, let's have a real quick meeting. I just want to educate you some things. So again, I had 12 kids, and I had their parents, and I bet 2 listened to me. And I mean, I don't know all the answers. I don't pretend to. But I bet you those pieces of paper that I handwritten were in the trash within an hour. And but some did. Some even now just kind of, hey, it's like, Jimmy's doing well, and I really do appreciate hearing about how they're doing. But a little bit of the ego, a little bit of, well, my teaching pro has the answer, or like Scott just mentioned, like parents educating parents, like, and I didn't need to do that. You know what I mean? I didn't have to do what I did, but I really wanted to help some players, and that was the kind of the thanks I got. And I was just really thrown back, and I was letting the 3 and 4 stars know, like, these are things you need to do. And it was a little bit disappointing. But I do like it when American players that I'm looking at tell me, hey, I got a tournament in 2 weeks. Like you just asked, like, hey, parents, like, what can we do? Hey, let us college coaches know when your kid's playing. Send us an email. Hey, we'll be playing in this city. I'll let you know that, like, that's good, because you think, well, geez, coach, that's your job. Hey, I'm running individuals. I got matches. I'm recruiting. Like, I may miss a tournament your player, that your son or daughter has, and like let me know. I might out of nowhere. Like right now, it's snowy here in Ruston, Louisiana. If I had Dallas is 4 hours away. If someone said, hey, this player you're looking at, it's got a tournament, I might jump up and get through. Of course, I'm used to the snow, but I'll get over there and watch it. But I may not know, and I think sometimes parents just assume we know every USTA tournament that's being played.
Can I jump in a second, or
go
ahead?
I'm sorry. The parent calling you or emailing you, or
no,
do you want to the child?
The child. I'm sorry. I meant the child emailing me would be much better.
Okay. Sorry. Go ahead, Tony. Was that you?
Yeah. To be honest with you, I think, in my opinion, the biggest part of the problem is, I think junior coaches not only emphasizing grips and strategy, but here's one of the things that I think is very interesting. If you talk to any coach and you say, what part of the game is mental, what part of the game is physical, most coaches will say anywhere from 70 to 90% are mental. Kids don't work on that. They come in there thinking, okay, I'm going to play this way, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and aren't really open to understanding the complexities of the game and really thinking being a thinking man's game. And I think the second part is the competitiveness that these kids come from in juniors to college is such a significant jump that they're floored and they're not ready for it. And so I think that in junior tennis, creating environments that are more competitive and holding kids more accountable for competitiveness is going to really help them as they grow and go to college, because you go from the round of 32 at nationals to college tennis, I mean the SEC, and you're playing a girl from Lithuania who nobody's heard of, who's all over you, and I think a lot of times the kids don't come in understanding that when you get to college, you're all of a sudden you've been competing in 12s, 14s, 16s, 18s. Now you're going against the U.S. and the world, and it makes it really, really competitive.
Well, and so what is the answer, though? Because we have very limited opportunities here in the U.S. for our kids to compete on an international basis, meaning we have very few ITF tournaments here for them. So if you want your child to compete against the world, as you say, it means extensive travel. It means time out from school, because the ITF tournaments run starting on a Monday and they run all week. So, if your kid's in regular school, that's a big challenge. I mean, there are really so many issues at play here holding our kids back, I think. And it's a bit overwhelming as a parent to think, oh my God, how am I going to provide all this for my kid? I'm already spending all this time and money on this, and it's not enough. Now you're telling me, they're not even if I do all this, they're not going to be ready to compete on the world stage.
I wouldn't say that. I'm not saying that at all. I think what I'm saying more so is because there are plenty of kids that have come in, to my program. I typically didn't recruit the blue chips. I had a lot of 4-star kids that developed and stuff. I think it's all more of an attitude, an overall attitude that needs to be a culture of, the right mindset going forward. I think, to me, the biggest issue from just hearing the coaches and experiencing what I've experienced and what I've seen, I don't necessarily think it's foreign American. I think it's attitude. And I think an overall attitude of, understanding, competitiveness, being open, and, wanting to work hard and wanting to really love the game, I think I always use the example, and I don't know if it's good or bad, but, from a competitive standpoint, if you go to a court and you're playing basketball, to keep playing, you've got to win. Whereas in tennis, it's you don't have that competitiveness in practice as much, and it's tougher because in certain parts of the country there aren't enough good players to create that. But I think, in my opinion, that's part of the problem, just to get the kids thinking a different way and a way that helps them understand I've got to grow and change and expand my game.
Gotcha.
Lisa, if I can add to that, this is Scott.
Okay. Yep.
Can I add to that?
Sure, please.
I think a lot of it, too, is our learning paradigm in this country. If you look at high school, they're in class 8 hours a day. They take, 10 to 12 tests for every course. Each test is on about one chapter, and it's the teacher that's responsible for their education. When they go to college, now they're not in class 8-9 hours a day. It's 2 or 3. Each test is on about 7 to 8 chapters, and there's only 3 tests per course. It's much deeper. And I think that goes to our tennis as well. When you look at levels of tennis development and tennis strategy, the American kids, a lot of times, many of them are they're very shallow. They're not very deep. The very first level of learning is memorization, and there's been a lot of studies about how the learning changes going from high school to college. Now it's not just about memorization. It's about learning to analyze and to be able to utilize that information on many more levels. And I think the same thing happens in colleges. There's been a lot of discussion about the transition from the junior game to the pro game, and that the junior game is still about the basis of just getting balls in and if I can just rally and get more balls in, that's great, where the pro game has many more weapons. And I think that's the same thing. Our juniors, we put so much emphasis on winning that winning a lot of times I have found is the opposite of development. Because if they're worried about winning, they're not developing the skills and the tools they need to be successful later. And I think we fall short on that as a tennis society right now in the United States with our juniors. They're so worried about winning and the incrementals of just getting past that player that they want to be. They don't really develop the tools that could take them years ahead.
Interesting. All right, I'm going to switch gears now, you guys, because I also want to talk with y'all today about the scoring and format changes that are going on in college tennis. And because y'all are from schools that, maybe the NCAA championships aren't within your reach at this stage of the game, I think you offer a unique perspective on what's going on. And before I open up the floor to you guys to add your thoughts here, I wanted to just mention I got an email from Bobby Bayless this morning, who was the coach at Notre Dame. He's still very involved with the men's tennis program at Notre Dame. Colette Lewis of Zoo Tennis recently published a letter that Bobby wrote to fans of college tennis, and it's receiving a lot of feedback. I'll just use that word because it's kind of a neutral word. And I'd invited Bobby to join us on the air today. Unfortunately, he's not able, but one of the things that he said to me in his email, and I did get his permission to read this, so I just want to say that. He said, "The biggest reason for me to call in is to explain that the entire effort to present a new ITA format is the impending crisis facing college sports. This is highly likely to force schools to drop sports. We simply want college tennis to be more fan-friendly, and this change has been very successful, and he emphasizes very. 15 of the 16 men's coaches at the national team indoors voted their approval. The SEC voted to use it for all regular season matches, as did the Big 12 and the Ivy League. I think the Pac-12 is also going with it. All of this is happening despite the fact that we will revert to the old format for the NCAAs. So I have said this in private. I'm going to say it in public. Every time I talk to one of you coaches, I hear a different story about what's going on with the format and scoring changes in college tennis. And all of the people I've spoken with are people I consider my friends and I trust implicitly, yet I'm hearing a different story from every single person. And now I don't know who to believe anymore about what's going on. And my underlying question for all of these changes that are going on in college tennis is, why did anybody feel a need to change anything? College tennis has never been a revenue sport. It's never been a sport where there are thousands of people clamoring to get into the stands for the matches. It's never been a sport that's been televised on a regular basis. Why all of a sudden the push?
Lisa, can I address that a little bit?
Please. Jim, that's you,
okay.
Yes?
Yeah, this is Jim, Lisa.
Okay.
The answer is somebody's lying to us. I mean, it's really as simple as that. And unfortunately, there is so much concern from the coaches because we don't have a clue what's actually going on. You know, we hear the USTA has no interest in this, they're not involved, and we have heard people say the USTA is pushing this. We've heard that the NCAA has no interest in changing this and that the NCAA is completely involved in this, that the ITA is doing this completely on their own, that the ITA is doing this in conjunction with everyone else. It's very difficult for any of us to know when we are getting so many different answers and no one has the courage to step up and say, this is exactly what is happening. I remember when you had David Benjamin on your show a number of months ago, you asked him some very direct questions and he spent 20 minutes walking around them and never answering them. That's the problem that many of us have as coaches. I spoke with someone right after the convention, the coaches convention, the ITA convention in Florida, after we received that wonderful email from David Benjamin saying that all of the coaches were completely in favor of the new format. And this gentleman who was on David's inner council said that's absolutely incorrect. It was no different than the dissension that we had back in the fall when this was going on. So the question, who are we to believe, is a very good one because we've never been given the courtesy of an honest answer.
Well, so that's coming from a coach. That's really scary to me.
Oh, it is. And if you look at the NCAA team championship format, based on their survey that came out a few weeks ago, how does the email that you got tally with the fact that the male student athletes, 83%, want to warm up with opponents? 90% of the women's players want to. 60% of the women's coaches do. How many want regular scoring? The men who play tennis, 71%. The females, 88%. The women's head coaches, 72%. But according to the email, everybody wants to use the new format. Would somebody please tell me what's going on? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, can I speak? This is Chad. Jim, you're right on. You're right on, and we're getting all these votes and percentages, and obviously, Jim and I and other college coaches, we all talk to one another, and to me, the Big Five conference coaches are really the ones that are on board, and I think they have, and I use the term lightly, fallen for the idea that, well, by doing this, that we'll make more money, and I used to own a business, not too long ago. I own a trucking company, which is I know a little hard to believe. But I would never buy an extra truck if I didn't have the freight to haul it. I never, like, if I had a contract, then I would buy the truck, for the new contract. And no one's ever said, if we do no ad and 6-game, doubles, we're all going to increase 10% in our salaries, or 20%, or we're guaranteed X a number of games on TV. No, there's no guarantees. Like, that's just terrible business. Like, to think that we're going to do all this, and nobody's sitting at home saying, hey, that college tennis match is on down the road 10 minutes. I don't really want to go. Oh, but they're doing no ad, and then they jump off the couch and go to the college match. Like, and no one's doing that, and no one's saying, like, hey, now it's on no ad, let's watch it on TV. None of that's happening, and it's never been a revenue gaining sport, like you mentioned earlier. It probably never really will be. I think all of us coaches do the best we can to get the stadiums full, our seating for matches, but and most coaches I know are not in favor of it. But one thing is interesting, non-conference, you can play any format you want. And I think, and Jim, and I think you've probably seen it as well, is that I think I've seen schools still playing 8-game pro sets. I've heard some matches playing ad scoring. And if two coaches get together and they say, hey, let's do it the old way, then you do it the old way.
Yeah, and from what the email said to you, Lisa, am I correct? He said that he named 3 conferences, rather, out of how many conferences in America? So if there are only 3 conferences that are adopting the new format, that's horrible. That means about 90% of the conferences don't want it.
Right. Well, and
Lisa,
interesting,
can I speak?
Sorry, go ahead.
This is Granger. I was going to speak to that a little bit, if it's all right.
Yeah.
I have an interesting perspective to it. As you know, I wrote something last week that had people contact me. I've spoken to some people who are on that committee, and my feeling is it wasn't 100% that people wanted to make this change, but people got on board and thought, we'll try it. And I'm on record as saying the same things y'all have, as Chad said, changing to no ad isn't going to get people jumping in their truck and coming down to watch your match. But, I'm as Colette called me, Switzerland on this issue. But I think some coaches decided, hey, there's a movement, let's see, let's change, let's experiment and see what happens with the format. I do know there's several conferences out there that are still discussing it. They start conference play a little later, and are talking it through this week. So I think right now it's an experimental phase, and I think some of the coaches that maybe voice their differences with the ITA and with the committee about this are going along with it in a trial format just to see. Now, one of the coaches I did talk to said that they have enjoyed it so much more than they thought they would. And there has been an excitement level to it. It's been different. It's brought a different dynamic to their matches. So, this was somebody who was anti the change and has enjoyed the change, has enjoyed having matches that go 2.5 hours versus 4 hours. There's a lot of arguments either way. I think maybe it's time to step back and just see how it plays out. There are a lot of questions that need to be answered, but let's see what happens with this. Let's see how the kids. It's not a crazy change. I grew up in the 9-point tiebreaker. Call me crazy, but didn't we used to play 2 out of 3 sets in doubles?
We did. That was my time period.
Yeah, I mean, that's my time too. I dating myself a little bit, but I feel like I used to grow up near Trinity back in the 70s and early 80s when they were really good, and I would go there, I'd miss school, and I'd be there all day and all night watching dual match. But times are different. People are looking at different ways. I think they're trying not to cut out, doubles, which I think is good. They're maybe changing the format a little bit. I mean, it could have been worse. They could have just said, hey, play singles first and to clinch, and then play doubles only if it's 3-all. The other
and that would have made matches go at least 4 hours. I mean, come on, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but I don't mean to butt in. I apologize for that, but it doesn't make any sense. Tennis is not going to go away by shortening a dual match by 30 minutes. ADs are not going to bounce tennis. It is a sport that has been around for a very long time. It's going to continue. The fact that the Big Five conferences want to legislate what to do, let them do it for themselves, but don't force it down the throats of 99% of the other student athletes and programs. I mean, it's not going away.
I'll also surprise you guys. The Big Five coaches aren't in agreement on this, as well. You may think they are.
Why are we hearing from David Benjamin and the ITA that this is what everybody wants?
Well, I'm curious about all this information too. I'm just telling you what I've heard from big conferences and small conferences, coaches talking in confidence with me about this. I think it's split. I think people are, but I also think there's quite a few coaches who've decided, let's see what happens. Let's try the format out. I don't think, so I'm not, like I said, I'm not arguing for or against it. I just think that there's a movement now with some coaches to let's try this out. Let's see if it does anything, and then we can go back, because then we'll have the data.
I have another caller on the line, guys. Let me bring them on because they've been waiting patiently. It's a caller from 480-200. Are you there?
Yeah, that's me. This is Sue Tennis speaking.
Hi.
I would just like to, hi, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Sure.
Sorry,
so
I'm
just
eating lunch.
for my
I'm eating
listeners,
lunch right now.
My listeners that may not be familiar with you, you have a Twitter account. You've asked me to please maintain your anonymity, which I am happy to do. You have a Twitter account called Not Zoo Tennis. So you have tweeted kind of in opposition to what Colette Lewis of Zoo Tennis has been putting out there, and you have some pretty strong feelings on the format and scoring changes, and I think it'll be interesting for my listeners to hear from you. I assume you're a student.
Yes, I am a current college tennis player, and mainly it stems from the fact that I feel like the players are really, a lot of the players are really not against it at all. I mean, I don't know if you guys saw what Jared Hiltic had to say on Twitter the other day about it. That's really how a lot of the top players are feeling. Everyone on our team is a fan, and I just think if we have so much negative attention brought to it by people like Colette, like she's so against it. It just seems like I don't really know what's the point of that, in my opinion. Like, all that's really going to do is hurt college tennis, and I don't think that the scoring format changes are as huge of a deal as she's really making it out to be. So I just, basically, the whole idea behind Zoo Tennis is calm down Colette, if you will.
Well, I have to tell you, I share Colette's outrage, and it's more from the perspective of...
I know you do.
It's more from the perspective of not getting the true story of the reason behind making these changes in the first place, and what truly is the ITA hoping to accomplish here, what are the coaches hoping to accomplish, and why is the NCAA upholding last year's format for the championship? What's the real reason behind that? And so I think that's a lot of the controversy here stems from feeling like decisions are being made in secrecy, and the real reasons for them haven't been disclosed.
Have they not? I was under the opinion that they had been disclosed, and that the whole reason was to try and obviously shorten the matches, make them more viewer friendly for those people that aren't necessarily like avid tennis lovers, you know. So, for example, at our dual matches, I'm gonna go ahead and not disclose what school that is, but we don't have a huge crowd. Obviously, a lot of schools don't get huge crowds, and I think a lot of the in previous years, before all the format changes, we would get maybe a decent crowd for doubles, and then during the singles, it's dragging on, and people leave, and by the end of the match, there's 10 parents in the stands, you know, and we're trying to. I feel like with this new format, we've had people that aren't just like, you know, that avid tennis fan that like they stay longer. It's more entertaining. It is more exciting. I don't think there's any denying that it's more exciting for people who aren't as familiar with tennis.
Let me ask you a question, because this was a point that was made to me by a coach yesterday, and that is, I've only been to a couple of dual matches at big programs where they could afford to have refs on every court. Even at those matches, the refs were not holding up the deciding point paddle or flag or whatever was supposed to be the big rah-rah thing that was going to happen at the deciding point. But there are a lot of schools out there that cannot afford to have refs on every court, and in fact may have one ref or even no ref present. And so where's the added excitement on that deciding point?
So, wait, are you asking for the schools that don't have refs on every court? You think it's less, that takes away from some of the excitement of the no ad?
I'm saying that even the matches that I've been to at schools where they could afford to have a ref on every court, the refs weren't making a big deal over the deciding point. The crowd wasn't getting all riled up. This wasn't doing anything to increase excitement at the match. All I kept hearing in the stands was, wait, it's deuce. Why is the game over? I don't understand. So I think it leads to more confusion in the casual fan who watches one format on TV, another format at their kids' match, and then they come to college and now there's yet another format and figure out what the hell's going on.
I mean, yeah, sure, it'll add a little bit of confusion, but like, don't you think that that's something that will go away if it's fixed? And like other sports have the same thing on.
It's not going to go away at the schools that can't afford somebody sitting on the court holding up that flag.
Hey, this is Chad. Can I jump in?
Sure.
Yeah, hey, young man. First of all, I respect what you're doing. That you're this proactive. I got two things. One is, yes, I cannot afford 6 officials. So when there's a no ad point, the hooking that goes on is unreal. I mean, balls in by a foot.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, and then the second thing, and I think you'll agree with this, and again, I respect your maturity today, is that can you hear me?
Yeah, you're on.
There you go. I got you. I'm sorry. I thought I lost you there for a minute. Was that I think a lot of us college coaches just feel like we're just being made to do something, and we didn't get a vote. And that's really what's upsetting, as a grown man and in the profession is the quote unquote big schools just make a decision that they think they might benefit from maybe, and the rest of the 99% of us don't benefit at all. And that's really just being told this is how it's going to be. And maybe it's an experiment, but no one asked me. I didn't get a vote. And as a mid-major, you already feel put upon enough to then feel like the Power 5, whatever they want, they get. And I think it's great. You got people that are staying, for matches because it's no ad. I think that's great. But to be honest, I don't want to change the game that much. Why don't we do wrestling on changeovers? I mean, why don't we change over and you have right, that would be super entertaining. Yeah. People would come out and see wrestling on changeovers.
I've been an advocate for wrestling on changeovers for the past 3 years now, actually.
No, I'm just saying I'm being ridiculous on purpose, but if it's all about bringing the fans, we could do 1,000 things to bring the fans. I personally, and I don't speak for mid-majors here. I don't speak for mid-majors in this comment right here, but I don't want tennis to be NBA. I don't want the tennis to be NFL. That's not a goal for me. I don't want tennis to be that way. That's my goal. If that's somebody else's, that's fine.
So
I think
what
one of the
you're saying is.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Can I jump in here? Yeah, it seems like what you're saying is the goals for like a mid-major versus a bigger school are completely different, and the changes affect them differently, is what it sounds like you're saying.
Yeah. I mean, if you had an official on a no-ad point that was definitely going to overrule a call, I'm less not okay, okay with it, if you will. Okay. But yeah, I mean, I've taught my players on it. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, I guess my counter to that would be if you, I mean, you say there's a deuce point and you're expecting like they're going to hook, like, I guess how is it any different than like if we're playing regular format with ad and they're just hooking it? Like, I guess obviously it's a more important point, but if there's hooking going on anyways, like it doesn't really seem like the rule change is going to really be that much of an effect.
I think because it's a deuce point, like maybe they're afraid my player's going to get hooked first, so therefore they hook first. I just think, I mean, it's just one example of the no ad.
Yeah.
But the fact that you enjoy it, I appreciate you calling and sharing that, because I haven't met too many people that enjoy it. And even though I may disagree with you, I do appreciate hearing. And I used to be a men's coach, so I enjoy hearing that.
I would just want to say something. This is Tony. I think at some point the NCAA has kind of been chopping at tennis for years. And Lisa, we talked about this last week, and I posted. All of a sudden the dates are cut, and now the matches are cut. And I think at a certain point in time, this is all, in my opinion, geared towards one thing, and it's more likely by the Power 5 conferences, but it's just really fueled by strictly attendance and TV is what I think. And I think that, from what I'm hearing from a lot of the coaches that, the ADs are saying, hey, we've got volleyball on TV, softball on TV, gymnastics on TV, we've got to get tennis on TV. And the window of time, we have to have a more specific time as to the length of the matches. And I think, that's the thing driving it. I think from all of your standpoint, have any of you guys gone to your ADs and said, hey, look, what's going on here, and bond together, and basically, because as a group of voices, I would think that you guys could be somewhat powerful as far as saying, we don't want this. Has anybody talked to their senior women's administrator or AD about any of this?
This is Chad. I have, and I've also done within the conference. So.
And what's their response?
There's a committee, a leader, if you will, in the conference, and they go and they vote, and then I talk to other conference coaches. I think within the Conference USA, which is what we're in, and I haven't spoken to every coach on the matter. I do know one coach that's in favor of it, because he or she is afraid that we're going to lose college tennis. Like, they're just going to get rid of us. So it's more fear, driven than anything else.
Amen.
Can I interrupt again? And I want to just ask Pooh Tennis again, because I'm not sure if you have another class to get to. I know you said your teammates and the other players that you've spoken with are all enjoying the no ad. Do you like it better? Do you think it's preparing you better for tennis after college? Are you talking to guys that are planning to try their hand at the pro circuit after college? And, what is it that you like better? Or is it, I mean, because all of a sudden there's all this rah-rah talk. Wait, let me finish one second. All of a sudden there's all this rah-rah talk about it. To me, it smells of towing the party line. I'm just going to be honest.
Sorry, to you it sounds like what?
Towing the party line. That the coaches that are in favor of this are saying, you guys better come on and speak out in favor of this. We need y'all to rah-rah this out in public because there's too much dissension in the ranks.
No, I don't get that feeling as much, but I think as far as like you were asking about people that want to play after, I think a lot of people are under the feeling that it prepares you really well for the pro. I mean, even if the pros don't play that same format, like there's so much pressure on every game really that playing with that is really like good preparation. I know I don't know if you've seen any of our like Twitter interactions with Tim Sneechek's coach, but I mean he's definitely a big advocate for that as well. And a lot of people feel like it's like the people that say it's not good preparation for the pros. I mean, besides the fact that it's a different format, obviously, I don't see why they would think that. It's the same sport. It's more pressure.
And what about the 6-game double?
And
how do y'all feel about that?
The 6-game, I don't have a problem with that. I mean, I would have a much bigger problem if the alternate format of simultaneous singles and doubles, if that went through, because like I was talking to you about the other day on Twitter, I don't think that's really fair to limit someone who might be playing doubles and singles to only play one or the other. But I don't have a problem with the 6-game double sets at all. I don't think many people do, honestly.
I do as a fan, but that's not important. It's more important that you guys as players feel comfortable with it, honestly. And I recognize that, but as a fan, I don't like the 6-game doubles at all.
Why don't you like it?
It's over before it starts. I mean, if somebody gets off to a slow start, they really have no opportunity to get back into the match. It's over, before they have a chance to regroup. And that's not what tennis is. Tennis is about perseverance. It's a battle. It's, survival of the fittest. And I just feel like a lot of those moments are being eliminated with this new format, with the no-ad scoring. And the no-ad scoring, honestly, I mean, it's maybe shaving 10 to 15 minutes off of an overall dual match. So that as a...
Ooh, I don't know about that.
That's what
10 or 15 minutes. Is there statistics supporting that?
There are people that have reported that to me who have been keeping time at matches and comparing to last year. So I haven't verified it yet. We haven't played a match longer than 3 hours since the change, whereas like before, I mean, you could be grinding out a 4-hour match. But is that due to no ad, or is that due to the shortened doubles and the removal of the warm up?
Yeah, I think it might be both. I think all the changes combined are helping with that. I don't think if you just did no ad, that obviously the doubles thing is a lot shorter too, but.
Yeah, I think what the point I was making was the no ad scoring in singles is only shortening the singles by 10 or 15 minutes.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So in terms of creating a format that fits within this TV time frame, to me, again, I think there are a lot of other things we could do to make college tennis fit in that time frame without warping the scoring system, which is how I view what's going on now. But again, I'm a fan. I'm not a player. I'm not a coach. That's my perspective on it.
Lisa, two things about
simultaneous
play. Simultaneous play will be tough. You've got scholarship limits, and some of these teams struggle. I mean, expense-wise, traveling people, and B, a lot of times people don't have court space to pull something like that off that would really make it short. I just think that's not even ever going to be on the table.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. See, this is why I have y'all on. Y'all educate me. This is good.
This is Chad. If I could jump in for the young man that plays college tennis, I'm a little surprised to hear you say that the six set for doubles is okay. I would think in men's tennis, you break a guy's serve, it's over. So I'm a little surprised. You're the only guy I know that likes it. Yeah, like I used to coach men at my previous school, and I keep in touch with them, and I kind of ask them, and they can't stand it. And that's but it's your opinion.
I might be a little biased just because we've had some more success with that. But I don't know. I mean, I think it really favors getting out to a strong start, and it really makes you focus in, and you can't have any loose service games. If you get broken, you're kind of screwed.
Yeah. Okay, good.
But it's funny, that's the contradiction, because they talk about more fan friendly, and people, probably the most exciting part of college tennis match is doubles. So in one sense, they want to, bring more fans out, but in the other sense, they're cutting the one area that, most fans think is the most exciting.
That's a great point,
I
Tony.
mean, yeah, you're making it shorter, right? But isn't it just making it more exciting also?
Well,
like,
I think
now.
I don't think you can get a true portrait of, like, when you're, like Lisa alluded to a little bit earlier, I think, just from a coaching or playing standpoint, would it be more exciting to have a 15-minute football game instead of, 60 minutes? I mean, I think you want to see who the better team is, and you want to see on that particular day, and I think it doesn't give you an opportunity if you get off to a slow start to really get out of the hole.
Well, if you're the better team, why are you getting off to a slower start?
No, I mean, but I think if you look, Federer's lost a lot of first sets and come back to win matches. I don't think that the whole of a match should be a little bit longer. I remember going back, and I'm dating myself, playing 2 out of 3 singles and doubles, and it's just hard to, in college, and it's just hard to, to think that one set dictates who the better team is, because when we went to a pro set, that in itself was a little bit scary, but a whole set itself, that just seems actually a little bit short. I think I do think you'll see more parity because you'll see more upsets, I think.
One funny thing, when I was growing up, like you said, everything was 2 out of 3 sets. Growing up, pro sets is what is what little kids played. I find it really funny that we're really stuck on the pro set is so embedded in tennis. It wasn't it was a format that I was actually looked down at. Now it's considered standard. I just think things are changing and people are trying out new styles, and I think it's time to ask for some answers, but also maybe see what's going on with this the format, and just see where the data lies after this. I guess I'm more data driven. I want to see really what people think after this year. So those are my thoughts.
They did an experiment last year before that ran through indoors, and I never saw any data released after last year's experiment. But the scoring reverted to the regular scoring after National Indoors in 2014. And then all of a sudden, back to this no-ad and Thornton doubles again for this year. Are we going to see data? And I think a lot of us would stop debating this if there were some clear-cut data. But to date, as far as I understand it, there hasn't been. And Cougar Tennis, I don't know if you've seen information that the rest of us haven't, but I think it's crucial for the leadership of ITA and the NCAA, if they want to get buy-in across the board for these changes, there needs to be some solid leadership at the top, and they need to provide some data.
Word.
Anything?
No, I agree with that. I got about 10 minutes before I got to go here, but no.
We're off air in 90 seconds.
That makes sense. Oh, 90 seconds? All right.
Yeah. So finish up.
Okay. Yeah. I just wanted to say, well, if the real Colette Lewis is out there listening to this, that I think you should bite your tongue, so to speak, next time you want to trash the format, because I think it's just going to end up hurting the sport, really. Bayless's open letter that I read on the Zoo Tennis blog, I think had a lot of good points, and I think the biggest takeaway is that we don't end up shooting ourselves in the foot here. I think no ad is better than no tennis. So calm down, Colette. # calm down, Colette.
spoken like a true college kid. Thank you so much for that, and I appreciate it. I also have to say I appreciate Colette's honesty in, you know, being willing to stand up for her opinion. I think we're all entitled to do that, and she gives some incredible gifts to junior and college tennis and the pro circuit with these young players. So I think it's really important that we all continue to respect her for standing up for what she believes in, and understanding that she's not paid for the work she does, that she does it all out of her own pocket. And so I, for one, am very appreciative. In tennis, I'm appreciative of you for coming on. Coaches, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day. And to my listeners, I hope y'all learned something today, and I look forward to talking to you all again next week on Parenting Aces. Thanks for being on.
Who Tennis out.